it was quite a shock to the system. Like it felt like my reality shifted overnight,
Mm,
where I was going from being a Division One athlete to within 48 hours just in this, chaotic mental space and really feeling like I was kind of drowning inside.
mm.
Welcome to our inaugural episode of Mental Health in a Modern World. I'm super excited for today's episode because we have my producer Harry on the show, and we're going to turn the tables a little bit. So he's actually going to interview me, and together we're going to explore how this show came to be. So, Harry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on as the first guest. I feel honored, and it's been great to get to know you. When we first met, it was at Mike Salemi's Men of Movement retreat back in, seems like such a while ago. He's got the new one coming up already, and so time flies by so fast. But that was October, and you were facilitating. You were one of the facilitators there, and so I was really moved by the work we were doing there. So I think it'd be helpful to dig in to some of the origin stories of how you got there. So I'm just curious what that journey's been like to be like a facilitator for other people's groups.
Mm. So, my journey as a facilitator, it's interesting because when I, as a facilitator, am working with groups, the way I see it is I'm actually just working with reflections of myself.
Mm,
So when I'm working with people, whether it's individual clients or a group of men, really my facilitation comes from finding those individuals inside of me and working with the mirror, so to speak.
mm, mm,
So I actually never feel like I'm actually working with another person. I always feel like I'm working with aspects of myself. And I feel confidently that's what's allowed me to be a good, coach, therapist, facilitator, practitioner, is because as long as I can find some aspect of Harry within Greg or some
mm,
aspect of Mike within Greg, I'm always coaching from an authentic place.
mm.
And it allows me to really connect with whoever I'm working with on a deeper level. And for me, just the participation in my own healing journey has been really the foundation that's allowed me to do that successfully.
So in some of the stuff that I've read about your origin story, if you will, it seems like you were an active athlete at some point, and then you were struggling with several things that were challenging for you at the time. So I'm wondering, as far back as you want to rewind the clock, can you talk a little bit about where you were in that pre-era before you start to come online and figure out what was happening with you?
Yeah, so I was an athlete as far back as I could remember. Initially, I was a soccer player, I was a ski racer, but then golf was really my main passion.
Mm,
And so I left home at the age of 16 and I went to a boarding school down in South Carolina so I could play golf year round. And it
okay.
was a golf and tennis academy. And so I spent 2 years there and then got a Division One scholarship to go to the University of Houston. And during my freshman year at Houston was when I had a physical trauma and had to have a surgical repair, which then after my surgery, when I was recovering, I started having severe anxiety. I started having a lot of obsessive compulsive disorder, a lot
Mm,
of like ruminating thought patterns, and started having a lot of insomnia. So I started to really struggle mentally and psychologically. And this really kind of took my path in a different direction where I really wasn't able to, focus on my golf as much. I actually wasn't really able to sit in a classroom for more than 20 minutes.
mm,
So I had to take a leave of absence and let go of my scholarship and just really devote time to my own healing. And so I struggled for a good, 3, 4, 5 years with severe obsessive compulsive disorder. And it was really, really challenging. And, I went through a lot of like the mainstream psychiatric system, but I never really found any results through that system. And so, I stumbled across meditation and started
mhm.
practicing meditation. And instead of hitting golf balls for 4 hours, I would sit in my dorm room and I would meditate for 4 hours, just trying to learn how to work with my own mind and trying to quiet my psyche and And what I started to learn was, first of all, I wasn't the thinker of my thoughts, I was the witness or the
Mm.
observer of them. And I started to notice how, the mind works and how a lot of these, what we call like mental health pathologies start to come about. And eventually I was blessed with finding the right teachers and mentors, Paul Chek being one of them. And, it really set me on this healing journey and this journey of, self discovery. And, over time, it started to transition more into also a professional, career and a sense of purpose. And I think that's very common in this field is where you, take the pain that you've been through and you turn the pain into purpose.
Mm.
And so that's really kind of my story, that brought me into a lot of the work that I'm doing today.
I feel, and what I've seen is that athletes have a very committed regimen, and when they tackle something, they do it with all their enthusiasm. So, do you feel like that level of dedication and effort that you were putting into the golf when it came time to switch? Because you said you went from 4 hours of hitting golf balls to 4 hours of meditation. So no one, people usually don't make that jump. They try to ease their way. Do you feel like some of that training from a sports perspective helped you when you did find something that was working for you to go ahead and head first into it?
I would say it was a blessing and a curse.
Sure.
The blessing was the commitment to really, seeking and discovering and practicing. But the curse is, when it comes to healing the mind, it's always a paradox. And so when it comes to healing the mind, the more effort you put in, the more it works against you. What you resist
Mm.
persists.
Mhm.
If I would, try and get rid of something, it would feed more energy into it. So the funny thing is the real healing happens in the surrendering process.
Mm.
So an athlete is always trying to force an outcome. But when it comes to things more mentally or spiritually, it's always a paradox. So it's more in the surrendering process that allows things to happen.
Yeah.
And so even though I was putting a lot of time and energy into, let's say, 4 hours of meditation, within those 4 hours, it was really just a surrender.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really, it was, like the old Zen term wei wu wei, which is action through non-action,
Okay.
right? So it was really 4 hours of learning how to not do, learning how to surrender, learning how to soften. And so it was, yes, the dedication to it, but it was also the opposite polarity of what I was used to, which was the force,
Mm.
which was the
Mm.
power through it, which was the resilience. So it was just the opposite polarity
Yeah.
that I needed to embody and learn. And it's more kind of like the feminine side or the yin to the yang, so to speak.
Yeah. And so, did you find you had to ease your way into those 4 hour sessions, or did you get there pretty quickly?
I wouldn't sit 4 hours straight. It was maybe over the course of a day where,
Okay.
and for me, I was quite desperate. So there were times where my mind was just looping and
Mm.
intrusive and,
Mm.
pretty much all day. So meditation started to feel like a relief. It started to feel like almost like a sky of dark clouds
Mm.
that would start to have little cracks.
Mm.
And in those little cracks, you would see a little blue sky or you would see a little sunlight coming through. It took me a few hours a day to begin to shift my identification with the clouds to the identification with the sky,
Mm.
which is the identification from thought to the identification of awareness. And so that transition was where I was really dedicated in terms of daily practice because I was starting to get really relief from the suffering that I was experiencing.
When did you feel like you turned the corner where you were starting to see that the practices and the work you were doing was helping you get out of this funk that you were in, and this pain you were suffering?
I would say about 3 or 4 years into it,
Mm.
um, I started to have some really deep experiences and some, paradoxical experiences where, when I was really struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder, I might be on vacation with my family on the beach in Mexico, but because of what I was experiencing in my own mind, I felt like I was in like a hellish realm.
Hmm.
But then, let's say a year later, I would be sitting in my one bedroom apartment in New Jersey and be in this state of stillness and felt like I was just swimming in kind of like this bliss.
Mm,
And I started to really come to the awareness that, heaven and hell are not places we go to, they're states of awareness that we embody.
yeah.
And so that was really when I started to turn the corner, and not just in a way of seeking relief, but in a way of actually expanding awareness into higher states of consciousness,
Mm,
that I started to learn and discover a lot of deep truths that a lot of the mystics would speak about. But through my own journey of suffering and, going inward and awakening through that process, I started to really understand what they were saying.
mm,
I started to understand a lot of the Zen teachings and a lot of the Eastern philosophies, and they were very healing for me to come across because they were explaining what I was experiencing. And so it was probably 4 or 5 years in that I started to really not just come back to baseline, but start to actually move beyond that,
mm.
and have experiences that otherwise, I couldn't really access or explain.
And was a lot of that possible because of the teachers you were having exposure to?
Yeah, I would say that, at the time, Paul Chek was the main teacher that I was
Okay.
working with and the
Yeah.
main mentor that I was working with. So, I had the blessing of being a client of his for 2.5 years.
How did you find Paul?
So when I was in college and I was competing as a golfer, my trainer at the time, his name was Justin Price. He was a Czech practitioner.
Oh, okay.
And so I was working with a Czech practitioner at the time, but more on the strength and conditioning side.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I didn't know that Paul also did a lot of mental, emotional, spiritual work. But I started doing a lot of research, and I felt like he was really the person that could help me. And so, he has a long waiting list, but, it
Yeah.
just came to be that he was willing to take me on as a client, and it was such a blessing.
Mm. And then as you started to enter this world of teachers like Paul Chek, was that eye-opening for you? Because if you're not aware of this world that exists of these teachers that can move you,
Yeah.
to levels that you didn't know were possible, or teach you concepts that were, probably not on your radar when you're training to be a golfer.
Yeah. I grew up in a family of doctors,
Mm,
but mostly Western medicine,
yeah,
which, has its value,
yeah,
but it also has its limitations.
yeah.
And so for me, the value of Western medicine is in a lot of like acute traumatic care.
Hmm.
But when it comes to chronic conditions, it really falls short. And so what I was experiencing were a lot of chronic conditions.
Okay.
And so initially going kind of the mainstream psychiatric route, even some physical health challenge I was struggling with, really just wasn't finding answers there. So once I found Paul Chek and a few other people that I was working with, it all made sense to me. Like there was something inside of me that said there are answers here, like there's truth here.
Mm,
And I think I had the gift of awareness where I was able to see the interconnection of all the things that I was experiencing. I could see how my anxiety, OCD, and mental health challenges were, for example, creating a lot of gut issues and digestive issues.
mm,
And I could even see how my digestive issues were exacerbating symptoms of anxiety or OCD. So I would start to see the interconnections between the mind, the body, the emotions, and how everything was really one integrated system. And so once I found people like Paul who were able to really explain that to me,
mm.
it allowed me to really understand on a deeper level what I was already experiencing, but maybe couldn't put the right words to it.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so on a deeper level, it actually, meeting the right practitioners actually met the deep need of feeling understood,
Mm,
which is something that as a child, I would say I never felt, was
mm,
actually to feel understood
yeah.
and to find people that speak a shared language that when you speak, you know they're actually really understanding what you're saying.
Mm,
And that creates such a deep sense of safety
yeah.
in the nervous system.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where healing takes place.
That's beautiful to hear that journey that you've been on. When did you start to think about moving from being more of a student and to helping other people? Was that a slow process, one off, or did you start to feel as you were experiencing these teachings that this is something you wanted to help other people with?
Well, the initial traumas that I went through, and it was quite a shock to the system. Like it felt like my reality shifted overnight,
Mm,
where I was going from being a Division 1 athlete to within 48 hours just in this, chaotic mental space and really feeling like I was kind of drowning inside.
mm,
And so for some reason inside of me, I always had this felt sense of this is happening for a reason. There's some purpose behind this because it's so far out, like of left field,
yeah.
that I don't have any explanation as to how I could go from here to here in a matter of a few days without there being some reason behind it.
Mm,
And so I was always curious what that was. And once I started to experience a lot of deep healing, I knew that my purpose was within it.
mm,
You know,
yeah.
like they say, every wound is a womb
Mm,
that, has a gift that's, ready to be birthed,
yeah.
from the inside. And so, even when I met Paul Chek, he said, Greg, this is not your therapy, this is your internship. And, those were really true spoken words. And so I always had this sense like there was something here that I meant to do with this. I meant to share. I meant to, serve in some way.
Yeah.
It really allowed me to also not move into any victimhood where this was happening to me
Hmm.
and to feel powerless in relationship to it. It allowed me to really use it as a vehicle, not just to grow and heal myself, but then also to serve others.
Mm. And so, what was that process like for you as you started to figure out what it meant or what it means to be a teacher and a practitioner yourself?
Something that came through to me in a recent plant medicine ceremony, which was that every honest teacher must first be a humble student.
Mm,
And so for me, the first step to being an honest teacher is to be a humble student
mm,
and to always stay in a state of humility. And so I always wanted to make sure that even though I'm starting to coach people, to always remind myself that I'm a forever student as well.
yeah.
And so, like I shared when we started, I always saw my clients as aspects of myself. And by doing so, the transition was quite easy
Mm,
because I never felt like I was teaching somebody else or healing somebody else. I was always just working with the mirror itself.
mm,
And the mirror just happened to be a client or a student.
okay.
And so, there was obviously a transition in terms of building confidence as a practitioner. Like I would say, where I am today compared to 10 years ago, I feel infinitely more confident in the work that I do because when you're just getting started, you're just getting started.
Sure.
So I would say my confidence level has increased tremendously and my skill set has increased tremendously. But even within that, there's still the deep humility that says I'm always learning from my clients just as much as they're learning from me.
Mm,
because I am just working with other aspects of me.
Mm. Did you know what you would be teaching or how you would be serving clients in those early days? Were there specific modalities that you were attracted to more than others?
It was a journey of stepping stones.
Okay.
Like I started out actually just doing more personal training and corrective exercise coaching, like through the Chek Institute. And then I slowly focused a little bit more on the nutrition and lifestyle coaching.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to massage therapy school and, got my massage therapy license because I really wanted to be able to work hands-on with people.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went and studied shamanic energy medicine because after doing a lot of body work for many years, I realized that you can get a lot of results just working with the energetic body
Mm.
rather than just working with the physical body, because it
Yeah.
was the energetic body that was holding the information that was informing the physical body.
Yeah.
And then after doing a few years of that, then I realized that working with the psyche was the most important thing because it's the psyche that's informing everything.
Yeah.
It's our thoughts, it's our beliefs, it's the core archetypes,
Yeah.
which is the language of the psyche that we carry that is really informing everything in the physical body and the emotional body. And so it was just kind of like this evolution
Mm.
of awareness that my career has almost felt like a breadcrumb trail
Yeah.
that I'm just following back to the source. Most recently, it's been a lot of work with family constellation because I
Mhm.
realized that if you're working with an individual, that individual comes from a whole constellation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you don't know the constellation that the individual comes from, you can't really fully help and understand the individual. So now it's been working more with the constellations itself rather than just thinking that you're working with this isolated individual. So it's been this organic evolving process.
Mm.
Like I said, it's been following this breadcrumb trail back to what feels like the source
Mm.
or the root. We always talk about finding the root cause.
Yeah.
And, humbly, as the continuation of being a student, it seems as though the source keeps, going a little bit further back and a little bit further back and a
Yeah.
little bit further back. So it's kind of like Paul Chek says, like the horizon is, you can never reach the horizon.
Yeah.
It's always a moving target, so
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
So bring us to present day. What's the practice look like now, and how are you helping your clients?
So I work with people one-on-one, and most of my work is done remotely. So I work with people all over the world,
Okay.
and most of it's done on Zoom. I still see some people in person, but it's mostly a remote practice. I generally work with clients once a week
Okay.
for, from 75 to 90 minutes. And, I generally try and ask clients to commit to at least a 3 to 6 month process because healing doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And I'm not really interested in quick fixes.
Yeah.
Because people that are looking for quick fixes are usually people that are looking to be rescued.
Mm.
And I'm in the realm of healing, not rescuing.
Quick fixes. Yeah.
I've played the rescuer role too much in the past and it never ends well.
Yeah.
Because whenever you're in the rescuer archetype, you're always locking the other person into the victim archetype.
Mm. Mm. Good point.
And the victim, is the archetype of I'm powerless.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in giving people their power back, not taking their power away from them. So
Yeah.
that's why a 3 to 6 month commitment is usually what I ask for clients to get started. Anything less than that, then you're, you run the risk of getting into more victim rescuer territory.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of my work, the foundation of my coaching always starts with diet and lifestyle.
Okay.
Because that's always the foundation. You can't really do deeper work if someone's eating processed food and not getting
Yeah.
to bed on time and not moving their body. So
Yeah.
it always starts with the nutrition and lifestyle foundation. I really like Paul Chek's 4 doctor system of diet, quiet, movement, and happiness.
Okay.
And
Like
then
that.
after that, then there's all the other healing modalities that I work with. And some of the main healing modalities that I work with are archetypal work, family constellation work, and parts work.
Hmm.
So working with the psyche as a collection or multiplicity of parts
Mm.
is really, really supportive. And it's been incredible doing parts work with people in conjunction with family constellation work and archetypes. So those are kind of my key modalities. And I kind of
Okay.
sprinkle in, various forms of breath work and meditation and qigong and all the, disciplines and practices that are really supportive. So that's really what working with me looks like in a one-on-one fashion. And then I also have pre-recorded programs. So I have my 21-day mental health program, which is Healing the Mind, A Journey to Wholeness. I have a pre-recorded archetype program, Healing Your
Okay.
Core Archetypes, A Journey of Empowerment. And then I do some group coaching with what's called the Archetype Wheel, which you had the opportunity to
Yeah.
experience in Mount Shasta. So that pretty much kind of encapsulates my one-on-one coaching work, group coaching work, and then pre-recorded programs.
Which leads us nicely into the origins of this show. But I'm curious when you started your own podcast journey, even just as a listener, and then
Mhm.
subsequently having people find out about you and wanting to have you on their show.
So my journey as a podcast listener goes back to, 10 years ago when I just started to get into this line of work. And it was really just being a curious student of all aspects of holistic health. And then my journey into actual podcasting started with guest appearances.
Yeah.
And so this goes back about 6 years to 2020. At the time, I had a fully in-person coaching practice. I had my own studio,
Yeah.
and COVID hit, and I needed to shut it down.
Yeah.
And so, as most, things happen when a crisis hits, you have to get creative. And so I had to kind of shift gears and adapt and build an online business. And so during COVID and the pandemic was when I got into the podcasting world
Hmm.
and started reaching out to podcasters and looking to be a guest on their shows and started creating my own online program. I had the amazing opportunity to work with a good friend of mine, Josh Trent, who has an amazing podcast, Wellness and Wisdom.
Okay.
And he actually really helped me learn how to build an online business and builds online courses. And
Yeah.
so Josh was actually an instrumental person in my journey into the podcasting world. My first guest appearance was actually on Paul Chek's podcast.
Okay.
And so since he and I did, a lot of healing work together, and I'm also a Chek practitioner. So being a client and student of his, we did a wonderful podcast back then. And that just kind of opened the doors to many other guest
Mm.
appearances and eventually, started to build my own online platform.
Yeah. What were those early days like when you were showing up as a guest? Was it did it feel natural to you to share kind of, your expertise on a show in a public format like that?
It was always the same where initially I would be incredibly nervous because I've always had a hard time with public speaking.
Yeah.
And also I was always very, very quiet as a child. And
Yeah.
I'm a much more introverted person. So for me, getting on stage, so to speak, has always felt quite uncomfortable. But I noticed it would take me like 2 minutes to get through like the anxiety and the fear and the nerves. And then I found that it came really natural to me
Mm.
and it started to feel quite effortless.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting experience where there was a lot of fear stepping into it. But once I stepped into it, then things just flowed. And I got into like just really a beautiful state where it would just kind of come through me quite organically.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it was a challenge to step into it, but once I did, it was really brought a lot of joy for me.
So this is actually your second attempt at launching a show. You want to talk a little bit about the first show and what that was like?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I initially was approached by a friend of mine, and he asked me if if I was interested in starting a podcast.
Mm.
And so at the time, I didn't really know the territory too much in terms of starting my own podcast, and I
Yeah,
wasn't ready to really fully invest, the way I'm doing now in this show. And so it made sense to kind of like do it with someone else,
yeah, yeah.
and kind of test the waters a little bit. And, maybe did about, 15, 20 episodes. And it was great. It was a great experience. But that's what I would say it was. It was testing the waters
Mm.
to kind of see how it felt. Because
Yeah,
also I had this sense that at the time I was great as a guest, but I wasn't really sure how I would be as a host.
mm.
Because of my introverted nature, to kind of like hold the energy and hold the container as a host is very different than answering questions as a guest. And so I kind of dabbled in it, but I didn't really fully commit to it because I had so many other things that I was focused on. And so I would say this is really the first time that I'm going all in
Yeah.
on really building my own show. So yeah, that was kind of the initial experience.
How does the energy feel now versus back then in terms of what we're working on together and what we've planned and mapped out and your excitement about what's to come?
What feels different now is it feels much more refined as a mission.
Mm.
The podcast for me feels like a mission.
Okay.
And some of it relates to also where I feel and see the world at the moment and where the world is going.
Yeah.
And so it feels like many other things in life, timing is so important.
Yeah.
You might have the right thing at the wrong time, and so now it feels like the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
And so really focusing on mental health in a modern world with everything that's going on in the world,
Yeah.
it feels like the right time and the right mission. And so it just feels much more aligned and also much more focused
Mm.
on this kind of topic, which I feel like is so essential right now. Where back then I was still kind of testing a lot of different areas, but I wasn't really honing in on this specific area that we're going to dive into together.
Yeah, it's so interesting as we were having conversations leading up to this, for a couple of months, and then as we were getting closer, and this convergence of everything that's happening in the world, and we're recording this March 2026, but I feel it personally, because I'm very tech forward and I'm very AI interested, but also tied deeply into the spiritual world, and I see this confluence of all these things happening and people realizing that these AIs, are questioning whether they have a personality or a soul.
Mhm.
And people are wondering if the aliens are coming are really like spiritual beings. And so we're
Mhm.
being overwhelmed and bombarded, and also the nature of the always on socials, the always on 24/7 news.
Mhm.
When I was growing up, you didn't know what was happening on the other side of the world immediately, that bombs are being like launched. And I think it's just having a huge impact on people's mental health. And so I think, speaking to your point, that the timing on this is very needed, I think, for what a lot of people are going through and feeling right now.
There's interesting research that says the average person today consumes more information than our ancestors did in a whole lifetime.
I believe her.
So, the mind has to digest, metabolize, and assimilate information,
Yeah.
just like the physical body has to digest metabolize and assimilate food.
Mm-hmm.
So food is really just energy and information, right?
Yeah.
So food
Yeah.
would be calories and nutrients, right? So calories are units of energy and nutrients are bundles of information.
Mm.
So when we're eating food, we're consuming energy and information
Yeah.
going into the physical digestive system. When you consume information on your phone, you're consuming energy and information that your psychic digestive system has to process, it has to metabolize, it has to assimilate. And so if you imagine that quantity,
Yeah.
if you think about if the amount of food that we ate in one day was the amount of food our ancestors ate in a lifetime, what that would do to your digestive system,
Yeah.
it would explode your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're doing that to our psyche on a regular basis. So it's quite understandable why there's so much anxiety and depression and
Yeah.
addiction and ADHD and all these pathologies as a result of just the flood of information and overstimulation. And there's many other factors that obviously we'll get into on this show.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the format that we've landed on. I think we're going to be doing a mix of some solo and some guest content.
Yeah, so we're going to have solo episodes where I'll be delivering a message, offering a teaching. I'm going to have guests that I will be interviewing in various fields of mental health and holistic health. So we'll have some guest interviews. And then I'm also going to bring on some volunteers and some clients to
Mm.
actually do some live recorded coaching and healing sessions.
Oh,
So
great.
it's almost like our listeners get to actually step into the room
Mm.
of a live coaching or healing session. So we're going to have all three solo episodes, guest interviews, and then actual recorded, healing and coaching sessions.
I think that's a fantastic format because it really gives the listener and the viewer like a taste of your world and what it's like, for the people that work with you. But also, there's something dynamic that happens when you're in conversation with another person who's got an expertise in one field, and you sort of riff off each other. And just from seeing like the shows on which you've been a past guest, and I imagine some of those folks maybe stopping by to make a guest appearance on this show, I think there'll be this wonderful dynamic of what's the saying, steel sharpens steel, or iron sharpens iron, something to that effect. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes and to be partnering on this with you. Right now we've settled on a weekly cadence, so new episodes will be coming out every Friday, so you'll have them queued up for your weekend listening. And then I believe we want to direct people to mentalhealthinamodernworld.com. Is that the right URL?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the place where you'll be able to see all existing episodes, and you'll be able to sign up for Greg's email list and also see all the different places you could listen. So it's going to be available on all the platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere you consume your favorite podcasts. So, Greg, thank you for giving me this opportunity to turn the tables a little bit and just get a little bit more of a deeper dive into your background and how you ended up here. It's been exciting to get to know you, and I already know more about you than I did from when we first met, and I'm excited to have listeners come in along on this journey with you.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you so much for your support. And thank you all to the listeners tuning in. I'm really excited to go on this journey with you all.
So don't forget, subscribe and follow. That's my job as Greg's producer, to keep reminding you. So we'll see you soon on the next episode.